Hello and welcome back to Car and Bike. I'm Bilal. This is a new Renault Duster and behind me is a fuel pump. And in this video, we are driving the 1.3 turbo DCT in the city on the highway and we'll be taking a closer look at how it is to drive in the real world condition and what the real world mileage is like. So let's get going. We're using the tank to tank method where we will fill it up to the brim and then drive around 80 kilometers in the city on the calculated and consistent route, after which we'll tank it up again. We'll divide the kilometers driven by the fuel consumed for the tested and the calculated mileage. We'll repeat the same cycle all over again for the highway. Now tanked up and ready to go, and first things first is the initial impressions of this new Duster, which is quite promising because you get in and you get this commanding position. There's a long masculine bonnet light leading up the way and then you sit here in a very commanding position. You feel like you're sitting in a proper SUV and not a raised hatchback, which most of the SUVs or the pseudo SUVs in this segment project when you're sitting behind the wheel. Not over here. Then we have to talk about the ergonomics, and firstly let me tell you that this center console is raised. It feels premium though, but the place or the thickness of the center console is too wide, especially for me because it's plodding into my left thigh and it's not giving me an ideal position to rest my left leg. That's one complaint I have from this overall ergonomics, which is otherwise bang on. You have the tactile buttons for the AC, the center console or the touchscreen, it's tilted towards the driver. This is a driver SUV and that is one indication of it. I'm particularly a fan of this steering wheel because it's not exactly circular. It has cuts and creases on every edge and it does gives it a very nice feel to it. The materials are nice, it feels nice to hold. Even the button on it are tactile and it's rightly placed. The ADAS button here, there's way to control your all-digital MID on the right. Also likable is the all-digital driver's display. No analog here, unlike before. This all-digital driver's display, it comes with its own sort of quirks that you get from a Renault car or a French car. Now over here you have negative spaces, but it can be configurable. It is crisp, it is colorful, and more importantly, it is, as I said, configurable. But there's one issue that I have with it is it has only one trip meter. That is one quirk that you have to live with. Another quirk that I need to talk about is the volume control or the multimedia control button in this car. Because when I first sat in, it took me some time to find that button where I can reduce the volume or change the station on the FM. Because firstly, on the steering wheel, you don't have any buttons, which is a conventional way to put it. There's no volume rocker switch or there's no way to mute or change the channel on the steering wheel. I also had to dig into the touchscreen to find the volume control button, but I couldn't find any because that multimedia control is placed on a separate stalk placed behind the steering wheel. And I couldn't find it at first because it's behind the steering wheel and beyond my eyesight. Now this stalk has buttons on the side and a circular dial at the back. It took me some time to get used to it, but once I got used to it, it feels nice to operate and I wish more cars could actually offer this now. While at it, let me also tell you about the seats, which are really nice because they have a stiff cushioning. They also have right bolstering on either side and they offer you nice support, something that you usually get in a driver's car. I'm talking about a driver's car a lot, but we'll talk about driving in some time. But I also need to tell you that the seat ventilation in this Duster is really effective. One of the most effective ones I've recently experienced, especially in this scorching Mumbai summer. Okay, that's all the yapping about the ergonomics and the in-cabin experience that I had with the Duster so far. Now let's talk about the engine, and I know you want to know about the engine feel in everyday drivability. Now firstly, this 1.3 litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine, it has done its duty before in the Duster, and over here you can feel that it is a refined engine. Now I say you feel that it is a refined engine courtesy of its four-cylinder engine because there are no vibrations. Okay, that's understandable. But the one problem that I have with this engine is it feels noisy for a four-cylinder. It feels when you're idling or when you're on the go, it is noisy and you can feel the engine that you usually do in a smaller three-cylinder engine. At first, I genuinely thought that the 1.3 is a three-cylinder engine, but it's not. It's a four-cylinder. It is refined, it is smooth, has no vibrations at all, but it doesn't sound good. But get past this chink in its armor and there's so much to love about this engine. Firstly, there's good torque supply lower down the rev range. Keep the throttle light and there's enough push from the engine that you never have to bother about the turbo lag, which is noticeably present below 2000 RPM. For city driving, there's no real need to ring the engine at all. Just a light foot and it's enough for your everyday drivability. It's relaxed, it's comfortable, it's almost like a non-turbo petrol engine. Almost feel like a naturally aspirated engine when you're not pushing it. But start to push it and its real nature starts to show up. All of its 160 horsepower, that starts to show up and it starts to sound enthusiastic and it goes with a certain fervor. Okay, I admit not the same kind of fervor that you get from the four-cylinder 1.5 TSI, but it gets close. It gets really close to that enthusiasm that you get from the TSI. This engine, it has a strong, really strong mid-range and it does give you that slight involvement through its quick delivery and the way it delivers power throughout the rev range. We'll talk more about its enthusiastic nature when we are out on the highway, but right now I need to talk about the gearbox. The DCT, which is smooth, slick, it's quick shifting, and I admit it's again not as good as the DSG, which is the best out there, but it gets pretty close. It almost feels like you're driving a torque converter. It shifts nicely. You never know that the gear shifts are happening, be it up shifts or down shifts, and it shifts early. It is a good quick shifting gearbox. However, if I have to nitpick, it's when you're getting off the line, say on a red light, it lurches a bit and that ruins it out of its say refined nature. But otherwise, this is one of the nicest TCT I've experienced of late. Now, this really good nature of this dual clutch transmission could be courtesy of the wet slump nature of it. Now, Renault has paid attention to this and they have introduced a wet dual clutch transmission for the Indian condition, and it's very essential because the summer over here it's really high and so the highest till date. And more importantly, I've been driving it in the bumper to bumper traffic. I've been stopping it at the red light for a longer period of time. Talking about the stopping at the red light, the engine start-stop function in this car, it works brilliantly. You come to a halt, either be on a brake or put it in park, and the engine shuts off automatically and it doesn't kick in like in other cars where you lift off the brake and it starts the engine again. Now, it works really nicely and I'm curious to know how it will help in the city mileage. Now I'm clocking almost 78 kilometers on the trip meter and it's time to fuel up and then head out on the highway. But we'll be telling you the figures of both the city mileage and the highway mileage together. So don't go anywhere. Tanked up once again, and on the highway we are trying to keep a speed limit of around 90 to 100 kmph because that's the speed limit on the expressway, the Mumbai-Pune expressway. But right now at that speed, the Duster, it feels the happiest. It has, as I mentioned earlier, strong mid-range, and at highway speed it's sitting comfortably between 2000 to 3000 RPM. This is where the Duster really shows its potential because there's enough power reserve at the 2000 to 3000 RPM. The turbo is ready and spooled up, and if you have to make some quick overtakes, you just have to go slightly hard on the accelerator and it delivers really nicely. It shows how much reserve, the 160 horsepower power reserve you have out here on the highway, and it is effortless. Now, speaking about effortless, the Duster, it remains effortless even when you show it some corners through the ghats. Now, this Duster, it doesn't feel like a raised SUV. but rather with its configuration, it feels like you're driving a hot hatch. And that's a really great compliment. That said, the biggest talking point of the new Duster is exactly the same trait which made the older Duster so popular: the ride and handling. Its ride is firm, but it's absorbent at the same time. The rebound, it settles with such a grace after every bad patch of road that it inspires confidence. Give you that invincible feeling behind the wheel. Everything, be it the bad roads, the no roads, badly made speed breakers, potholes, bumps and creases, everything is taken a stride with a maturity which is hard to find in regular cars. And even at highway speeds, the stability is phenomenal. Body movements feels measured. It's also helped by those tires which has a really large chunky profile. It absorbs everything nicely and gives you that supple ride quality, be it at slow speeds or high speeds. And then we come to the handling. Now I've already spoken about how well the steering wheel is designed, but equally so or even better is the way it handles. There is a great amount of weight to it. It's not light, it's not flimsy. It has a perfect amount of weight to it. Be it in the city where it might not be the quickest, but it has a certain weight which gives you an authoritative way to handle it like an SUV ought to. It goes, as I said, not really quickly, but it goes directly. It has a great amount of feedback, and no matter what speeds you're doing, you are actually having fun because you feel connected to the car. There's some little amount of texture if you go hard on the throttle while the steering is turned in, but that's negligible if you can actually handle it. But otherwise, the steering is kind of the best out there. Now, to give you an example how well the steering is uh, set up in the Duster, I'm taking a proper U-turn, and once I'm done, the steering return to its original position is just so good. It turns back to its original position nicely, smoothly, easily. And that gives you an example of how good the steering setup is. So all of that steering, combine it with the supper ride quality, and it gives you a driving dynamics of the new Duster. It is good car to drive, be it in the city, on the highway, for short distances or long distances. Okay, so let me put it this way. If the Taygun Kushaq are the driver's car, they are more involving, more stiff and responsive, while say the other CSUVs like the Creta, Seltos, Sierra or even the Grand Vitara are focused more towards the family and comfort. This one, the new Duster, is the perfect middle ground. Not as focused as the Germans, but still a notch better than the rest of the roost. And finally, what you have been waiting for, it's time to reveal the real-world mileage of the new Duster 1.3 DCT. Now, after driving it in purely city condition for around 78.9 kilometers, I fueled it and it took in around 8.5 liters, which translates into a calculated real-world city mileage of around 9.2 kmpl. And then I took it out on the highway and came back after driving around 94.5 kilometers. Tanking it up took in around a little over 6 liters, which gives you a calculated real-world highway mileage of around 15.5 kmpl. Now, at this point, I also need to tell you that the indicated mileage during the city run and at the end of the city run was around 11.7 kmpl, and out on the highway, the indicated MID display of the mileage was around 19 kmpl. So give or take, there was a difference of around 3 kmpl in the realistic calculated tested mileage of the new Duster and the indicated mileage on the MID. So at the end of the day, the overall combined fuel efficiency, where we calculate the 75% of the city attained mileage and 25% of the attained highway mileage, we get a combined fuel efficiency of around 11 kmpl for this 1.3 turbo DCT. And it's not exactly far off from what we had expected before we started the test. But that's the real world mileage of the new Duster 1.3 turbo DCT. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, do hit that like button and share this video with someone who's looking to buy a CSUV and they might be considering the newly launched Duster. And if they're looking at the new Duster, they might not want the 1 liter and they can't wait for the hybrid to come, and they might be buying the 1.3 turbo DCT. And if you have any other questions regarding this car that I didn't cover in the course of this video, and if you have any other questions about this car, about its rival or any of the specification, do write them down in the comment section below, and I promise we will address them all personally. But that's all from me in this video. This is Bilal signing off. Until next time.